Good evening, everyone. Adequate public notice of this meeting was provided by the Secretary of the Board on February 28, 2020 to the Home News Tribune and the Clerk of the City of New Brunswick. The time and location of this meeting and all meetings of this body are posted in City Hall, 78 Beard Street, New Brunswick. Roll call, Mr. General.
Mr. Ortiz. Here. Mrs. Sadowski.
Here.
Mrs. Seawood. Ms. Sevilla.
Here.
Mrs. Shukaitis. Mr. Spencer.
Here.
Ms. Varela. Dr. Caldwell.
Here.
Mrs. Solis.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you.
This is a reminder that the public hearing on the budget will be held on Tuesday, March 24th, 2020, beginning at 6 p.m. at the New Brunswick High School in the auditorium. The next regular Board of Education meeting will be held on Tuesday, March 24th, 2020, beginning at 7 p.m. here at the New Brunswick High School auditorium. We have a presentation this evening from our Business Administrator, Mr. Richard General, for our 2020-2021 budget. Oh, I'm so sorry. If we could all stand for the flag salute.
Ready to salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My turn?
Yes, sir. Whenever you're ready.
So, in front of you tonight is the revenues and appropriations for the proposed preliminary 2020-2021 budget. As a matter of process for the board and the public, we received state aid on Thursday the 27th. We have to submit a preliminary budget to the county office by tomorrow. Once that's submitted, I will work with the county superintendent and county business administrator to get the budget approved, finalized, make any changes as necessary. Once those changes are approved by the county, it will be advertised in the newspaper by March 19th, and that will be the final budget that we will have a full presentation and a full budget hearing on March 24th at 6 o'clock before the regular board meeting. Okay. So this is still just a work in progress. I will say that some of the highlights in the budget is that we did receive $10.7 million increase in state aid. We're thankful for that increase. Unfortunately, though, we are still a district that, going into that state aid increase, is $57 million below adequacy. So what that means is that the state of New Jersey sets an adequacy budget for every school district in the state. Based on our enrollments and our student population, they assign a dollar amount to each student and funding, and they assign an adequacy budget. Our adequacy budget for this school year is somewhere in the range of, I have it here, but it's $57 million less than what we have. And if they were to give us uncapped state aid today for next year, we would receive another $46 million in state aid. So we are operating at 74.27% of our adequacy budget. So although we're very thankful for the $10.7 million, we still are, in my words, operating a budget for 7,500 children when we have 10,000. So everything, we are planning to continue to maintain our current programs, analyze our current programs, focus on the instructional priorities of the district, and continue to look at the viability of several programs and decide what we want to continue, expand, and maintain for the next school year. Lastly, as always, salaries and benefits is $5 million of the $10.7 million right off the top. Charter schools this year is $307,000 increase. And then, of course, we have mandated increases where for added district tuitions and rising pupil personnel service costs. With this budget does have a significant investment in instructional priorities and Chromebooks for students to continue our one-to-one initiative. And it has an increase of 25%. We have $250,000 in here to continue to do another air conditioning project at one of the schools. So that's just the general highlights of the budget. And, and lastly, I am recommending to the board a tax increase for the local taxes of a dollar amount of $800,000, which is approximately, not finalized yet, but about $5 a month for the average taxpayer in New Brunswick. So it'll be in the $60 a year range. So I guess if that being said, I'll open it up to any questions from the board first.
We're still working on this. This is just our preliminary. So what else can we expect? Is we're just looking at a preliminary for a final.
So there'll be definitely some tweaks to these numbers, making sure that, as you know, we had QSAC today and monitored by the county, so we definitely need to meet with them and align our priorities. They actually sent us an email today on 3 mandates they want us to make sure that we have funding for. And so once we have a finalized budget, and that'll be approved by the county superintendent, that user-friendly budget is sent to you, posted, advertised in the newspaper, and that would be what I'll present to you on the 24th for your final approval.
Mr. Chairman, as far as the capital improvement, what will that look like?
So, in this budget, I propose an increase of our maintenance in terms of capital improvements other than the air conditioning projects. We have our normal maintenance where we repair sidewalks, repair parking lots, and continue to form through our health and safety checklist, do all those. Every year we probably spend $3.5 to $4 million a year maintaining all the buildings, between preventive maintenance and routine maintenance and things that break and fixing them. That's about on average how much we spend a year. So I would expect we'll continue to do that. Any other questions? So I had about, let me see, 8 people that requested ahead of time to speak. I also see that 3 people that showed up at the meeting. So what I'd like to do first is, and 2 of those people are already on my list. So, you know what, let me do this a little different. Let me just take the person who signed in from the sign-in sheet first. Is there an Ingrid Marmol here? And keep in mind, since this is a meeting just to discuss budget, and I would expect the questions are really based on what's in the budget, what's not in the budget and questions about what we're funding for the next year's budget. Thank you.
Buenas noches. Primero quería empezar por que me preocupa como madre y residente de New Brunswick. Soy madre de 3 niños y me preocupa mucho lo que está sucediendo con lo del coronavirus. Sé que usted me dijo que se iba a hablar específicamente sobre lo que usted expuso.
So I am a mom who has 3 children. I know that you have mentioned that this is only going to be about budget, but what worries me and I would like to ask is something about coronavirus.
Lo que yo quería preguntar era si han hablado con respecto a incrementar más la que es la limpieza y poner más personal en el área de limpieza para lo que es el área de evitar contagios y limpiezas profundas en las escuelas para evitar si en algún momento llegáramos a tener dentro del distrito escolar a alguien contaminado con eso.
So she would like to know if some money has been set aside to hire more staff, custodial staff for cleaning and disinfecting of the classroom in depth.
So with regards to the budget, not only does next year's budget have money to buy extra disinfectant and supplies, we have already purchased about $15,000 to $20,000 worth of supplies. About a month and a half ago, we purchased machines that are battery operated spray machines. And so the answer is yes. This budget this year and the budget next year has money in there to purchase the items we need to be prepared for the coronavirus. And we've already have purchased many of those items, actually all of them.
Okay. Entonces, aparte de esto, también quería exponer una parte, pero me tendré que esperar para la próxima reunión para no alterarle la agenda. Pero la otra parte también era para agregar con respecto a todo lo que está sucediendo con lo de las escuelas, lo de si los niños se trasladan o no, entonces me imagino que no tendré respuesta de eso. Con la escuela de la Annex, no tendré respuesta, entiendo.
So she also wanted to speak about Lincoln Annex, but she understands that she's not going to have an answer because this is not our budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Okay, Julian LeChant.
Okay. My name is Julie Lichitz. I'm a PhD candidate at Princeton University in the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, and I've spoken at a few of the previous meetings. I was hoping to see more about the proposed plan regarding the Lincoln Annex and the budget you set aside to look into that proposal more fully. So I have a few questions related to that. Is the proposed contract with DEFCO fixed or time and materials?
So, I can tell you this budget has no money set aside to pay for anything associated with the proposal for Lincoln Annex, as the proposal indicates that if the board chooses to go forward with the proposal, all costs would be funded by the Rutgers, RWJ, Barnabas.
Okay, I understand that, I was hoping there would be some funds put aside for looking into this plan in advance. For example, budgeting a site study. Do you have a site study plan for either of the two proposed locations?
The answer is all of those costs, and none of those costs would be borne by the Board of Education.
Would the Board of Ed have choice over who the engineer, the contractor would be that would be brought in to examine the site? Or would DEFCO have choice over those contractors?
The answer is, it's not part of the budget process, and I don't want to, I mean, 9 of you are going to come up here and we're going to do this same dance, okay? So the answer is that we got that proposal 15 days ago. All of those things are being worked through, and then that's the last answer I'm going to give about Lincoln Annex. I'm the school business administrator here to talk to you about the budget that I have constructed for the public.
Right, I'm just asking questions about budget moving forward because this is a budget for the upcoming year, and I think there are some things that should be accounted for by the Board of Ed themselves, outside of DEFCO control.
Okay?
Okay. Regarding the transportation budget, it was noted that there would be funds set aside for students and parents to travel to and from the warehouse school at 40 Van Dyke. Will there be funds set aside when students are ill or if there are parent-teacher conferences? Because the site is 3 miles away for some of the families in the district.
Again, there are no funds in this budget set aside for anything that has to do with the relocation because all of those monies would be covered by the outside sources.
Did you ask DEFCO for that? For such funds?
I am not going to comment on any conversations that we have had with anybody regarding the Lincoln Annex project. It is not my place, and this is not the time.
Okay. I wanted to point out that the 131 Jersey Ave site is 34% floodplain, and a floodway runs through that site. I want you to be aware in your negotiations with DEFCO that you will have to put aside funds for flood insurance and understand how the reconstruction of the foundation will come into effect there. And I also want to make the point that both 131 Jersey Ave and 50 Jersey Ave are brownfield locations, and that you should put aside funds for contractors to examine those sites before accepting any deals with DEFCO. Additionally, you should be aware of any legal risk that comes into play. And I would like to ask, what is the price estimate for the site of the current Lincoln Annex School?
That is not part of the budget process, so I won't be answering that question. If you want to continue to give me some very fine suggestions about insurance and things that I should be aware of in the budget, I think I will continue to hear those in the final 20 seconds that you have.
I think you should also be aware of what it takes to get site control for the two properties. I don't think the land at 50 Jersey Ave is currently for sale, and DEFCO does not have ownership over either property as it stands. So be aware that these need to be factored in.
I thank you for your comments. I appreciate them. And we're going to go to the next speaker. Sharif Abraham, please. Not here?
I'm here, yeah, I just need a moment.
Okay.
So I have signed up to speak. I don't know why the line went down so much. Can you put it back up? I don't know if you have done that.
I don't have the ability
So I had signed up to speak last time you had a meeting, and it didn't really work out where I got the chance to speak, so I wanted to make that comment here, since this is a public meeting. First and foremost, when you are pondering how to actually structure a process of taking a school or buying it or selling it or whatever, there has to be a process of accountability that the community has in place. When we speak to you all, you say you have no power over the situation. When we
Mr.
speak
Sharif,
at the-
sorry to interrupt you, however, sir, Mr. General has already indicated, and we all know that we are here on the budget only. And unfortunately, although you were unable to make your comment at the last meeting, we will have a meeting this month, and it's scheduled for March 24th. So I would invite you to sign up and make your comment.
I had tried to speak in the previous meeting before that, and the last meeting, and now this one, I'm also asked to be silenced, and I am not going to accept that.
Sir, unless you are here to discuss the budget, you are out of order.
You are out of order.
Excuse me,
You are
sir.
out of order. I deserve a right to
Sir.
speak, yes, remember this?
Unless you have something to mention about the budget, I'm going to ask you to
the
leave.
biggest thing that you are all working on right now. You're trying to steal a school from a community, so we all have a right to
Sir,
speak on it.
you can go. Security, please escort this gentleman.
Shame.
I'll speak regardless. I don't need a microphone to talk.
Mr. John.
You're all in the wrong. What I'm saying is, no person, no member of the community has a right. Please just let me finish my paragraph. No. You all are saying
This is shameful.
they're evading accountability. You know they're wrong. You know they're wrong.
They say, but she's giving you the opportunity to come and speak at the right time.
Every time I do that, I'm not allowed to speak. That's the point. You understand this is wrong. I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your eyes too, and you.
Okay.
All right? Now, what I'm trying to say is, at the Board of Education, we're not allowed to speak.
Listen. Listen.
At the City Council meetings, they're also not allowed to speak, right? They evade accountability. You evade accountability. Mayor Cahill evades accountability. Devco evades accountability. Where is the chance to actually give the community control over their land? How is it different from taking a school in 1985? How is it different from taking a school in 1997?
He said, you done?
Sir, you're about to ruin the opportunity for the other 7 people to speak. So, as
Just give him his 5 minutes. Let him use his 5 minutes. What's the crime in that?
Apparently, it's my fault that you're silencing me, and it's my fault that you can't let the other people speak.
no, what you don't understand is that there are, just like there are laws, there are rules that govern these meetings. So, the fact is that this is a budget meeting to talk about the preliminary budget. If you have legitimate questions about the budget, I'm going to entertain them and ask them. If you don't, then we're going to move on, and we will close the public portion, we will vote on the budget, and we wish everybody a good evening. Ms. Moore, do you have any questions for me on the budget?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Due to where I will start off for middle school, due to where I know has been a complaint due to where your Wi-Fi system hasn't been good for the school. Would you please tell me is that in the budget to upgrade to make sure the Wi-Fi system works at middle school?
I'm not aware that the system doesn't work in the middle school. not removing the trailers from the middle school. There's no money in the budget to remove the trailers. We utilize the trailers.
And then also, okay, please, do you have money in the budget for insurance? Because I tell you, I hope you will take fault and due to where you're putting all these kids in danger. I have over 500 pictures to show the entire.
Yes, we have money for insurance. Next question.
Excuse me, what did you say with insurance?
Yes, we have money for insurance.
So God forbid a child gets injured, the Board of Education is going to be responsible.
We have insurance for that, yes.
Well, please, like I said, I will show the city how you're really endangering the children, so please make sure you have plenty. And then also for Roosevelt School, is there in a budget of upgrading for the kids to go out and play due to where that's also unsafe? Due to where, what, people are cutting the fence to get inside even when school is open and when school is not?
There's money in the budget to maintain the security and the fencing at Roosevelt School.
So, okay, if you're saying money is in the budget for certain things, when will it be done?
Next question.
Why, if you said you had money, why can't you say when it can be done?
There's a process for that.
I know things take time to work. Can you tell me what, before the kids get out of school, what, next semester, what? You're just trying to run time out due to where
Repairs are made on an as-needed basis. Once the maintenance department notices that there is a repair that needs to be made, a work order is put in, and the maintenance department would handle it accordingly.
Well, please, due to where I will, the person I provide evidence for what I do speak, and especially when I know I'm right, due to where it's been mentioned at City Hall about due to where people, adults are able to cut the fence and how they're able to go in as the students are playing or when school is not out. Do I have to take the picture to show you the evidence on that? So please, I hope you do something immediately to protect our children. Because like I said, it has been mentioned at the city council meeting also.
I'm sure Mr. Lizzolci will be right on that. Do you have another question about the budget?
Well, one thing I will say, not for the budget, but like I said, I will make sure that I do show the entire New Brunswick the danger you are doing for our children. And like I said, I'm the person to prove evidence when you're putting them in danger, what are the risks. I have the police reports to show you how many accidents, how many people have been getting hit there. But I will provide the evidence to the entire New Brunswick to show the danger that you are really putting these kids in.
Thank you so much for your time, if that's all you have.
Everything is not about money. Money does not take away pain. Money does not replace a life.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Gentleman. If you could please call the next person who's ready to speak on the budget.
And
Yes.
you're always ready to raise someone off due to where what? Guilt?
Charlie Crowder.
But believe me, evidence to show why you should not put these kids at that school, a flood zone with sanitary sewer pipes, over 4 lines there.
Thank you.
That school cannot
Ma'am, you're out of
clean it
order.
up. This goes all the way to North Brunswick. You cannot clean it up.
You are out of order, ma'am.
Please, like I said, do take the time and look at all these pictures, the evidence. Like I said, I have the police reports and all. Please do.
Good evening. Very disappointed with what I've seen so far tonight. First, I'd like to ask, why wasn't this meeting scheduled sooner?
Can you be more specific?
Well, last year you introduced a budget. Did you announce the meeting where you were going to introduce it, 4 days before, or did you announce it much earlier in the process? Why was it
We
so
announced
late?
this meeting at last Friday's board meeting. Everybody here, including yourself, received it.
Really?
And yes, at the opening announcement of last month's board meeting, Ms. Solis announced this board meeting.
Okay.
That is more than enough adequate notice.
Because I recall looking at the agenda and not seeing anything about it on there.
Do you have any questions about the particular specific budget?
Speaking of the agenda for today's meeting, I only saw this because it was posted at City Hall. I reached out to you to sign up to speak at 12:14 p.m. I said, can you provide me with a copy of the preliminary budget? At 12:19 p.m. you responded and said you'd be able to get that to me about an hour before the meeting. Did you send that to me, sir?
I did not.
Okay, and why did you break your promise to send that to me?
Because I was busy, I got it all done, and I ran over here, and frankly, I forgot to send it to you.
Okay. I think that if you're proposing to increase taxes on the citizens of New Brunswick, if you're proposing to close down one of our community schools, I think that we need to be more thorough and diligent and transparent with how we deal with the public. And what we saw today was more of a disgusting dictatorship. I'm sorry, but that's what it is.
You're totally out of order, Mr. Radical. I'm going to tell you this one more time. You're disrupting a public meeting. And you're not talking on the budget. You're making speeches. You're inciting the audience. You're out of order.
Get used to it. We all get 5 minutes. We have a right to speak to you. Can you just
budget,
do it for the 5 minutes?
To the budget, sir. We have rules. You don't seem to want to follow them.
What rule am I breaking?
The comments tonight are limited to the budget.
Okay, and during the budget hearing, you ejected someone. You involved the police to remove someone from the hearing
Because they were out of order. That's not your call. It's the president's call.
Well, guess
You're
what?
not running these meetings,
sir.
although
I'm
you
going to
would like
comment on it all I like. Because that was wrong. This is America. We live in a democracy, and you can't kick people out of your meetings because you don't like what they say during their 5 minutes.
Mr.
So
Radical.
get used to it.
Mr.
We are
Radical,
not
you
going
are out of
away,
order.
and we are sick of this
Getting used to your
nonsense.
nonsense? Never. Never, Mr. Radical. You're out of order. You always have been.
Do you have any questions on the budget?
We've had some decent conversation, but you're the one who's selling
Mr.
out.
Cradaville,
You're
do
the
you
one
have any
who's not doing
questions
your
on the
job.
budget this
You are
evening?
fabricating lies.
Obviously not. I'll move on to the next person.
Thank you.
And take over a public school, and you know you're wrong. That's why you don't want to be held accountable. That's why you want to limit comments. That's why you want to kick people out of this room. Shut the
Mr. Cradaville, you are out of order.
See what you're doing, Mr. Radical. Just what you want to do. Cite the public.
Please remove
No,
this
don't
gentleman.
touch me, sir. Do not touch me. This is wrong.
Mr. Cradaville, please
You're
leave. You
disrupting
are
the
out of
public
order.
meeting. That's a violation
You don't
of
like
good
being
city.
part of it.
You are
can
out of
resign,
order, sir.
quit
Please
your
leave.
jobs because you're supposed to serve us. This is we are the public and you work for us, not the other way around. Shame.
Ms. Stork,
Ms. Stork, is Ms. Stork here?
Hello? Hi, my question is, I keep hearing about $55 million to replace a school, or to build a new school, including, you said, they're responsible for everything, so there's nothing in the budget, in your budget for next year that addresses any aspect of this.
Correct.
Okay. But what is 55 million? What if it doesn't get done for 55 million? What if the remediation is so expensive that it
Look, Ms.
only
Stork, I
gets
don't have
halfway
to
done?
work with you, but you've read the proposal that said 55 million was an estimate and they would pay for all costs. Okay? So, for those of you who keep asking questions about is 55 million not enough money, the proposal is 55 million is an estimate based on educated engineers and architects, and if it costs more than that, they will pay for it. Next question about the budget, please.
Okay, but okay, I understand that they said it was an estimate, but then who would decide how much more was needed? You see what I'm saying? There's going to come a
So
time.
now you want to deviate the conversation to the Lincoln Act stuff, which I'm sure we'll be more than prepared to talk about at the March 24th board meeting. Do you have any questions for me on the budget?
It just seems to me like
So being the answer is no, I'd like to then call up the next person.
She didn't say no.
Hopefully has some questions on the budget. I mean, I don't know, look, I understand that you want this to be a contentious meeting. I am asking, do you have a question for me on the budget?
My time just got set back to 0 because you told me I didn't have any more questions about the budget.
Well, I will extend you more time. Do you have a question for me about the budget?
Yes, I just don't understand.
Because I actually have something you might make me very happy. Right? This budget that I didn't mention earlier actually has, we're going to increase our amount of money we're going to pay our substitute teachers in order to try to increase our substitute fill rate. So this Board of Education, under Dr. Johnny's guidance, has said, make sure you have enough money to pay substitutes $125 a day to raise it from 100. So that is something I forgot to mention in the budget that the Board of Education and the superintendent wanted to make sure it was in there.
great, that's a start. What would really make me happy is if we started hiring some permanent substitutes. We know we're going to need substitutes every day. And if we covered, as many cities do, a certain base number with actual teachers, that would be a huge improvement for the students, for the staff. And I understand that we don't have an unlimited budget, but I think that the priority in the budget should be more towards people who are actually working with the children. So it's to have some permanent substitutes who are certified teachers and could step in, especially in a situation where maybe a more long-term situation, where planning needs to be done, where conferences need to be done. I think it might be worth it to look at some cutting some
I don't want to speak
higher
for
up
Dr.
the chain
McCoy,
because
and I hope I'm not
the
mistaken,
most
but
important people.
I do believe that Dr.
the kids.
McCoy has already instituted that, where they basically have just hired subs for the schools to go there on a daily basis, but I hope I'm not incorrect in that. I know that was a plan they had. So, thank you for that. Any other?
But are they teachers? What I'm proposing is that they would be actual teachers that work for the district and.
Like I'm the guy with benefits.
Yes, if they work every day, they should have benefits. And they would have the full responsibilities of teaching. They would plan, they would.
We'll take that under advisement. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Lilia Fernandez.
Yes, good evening. These questions are about the budget. I would like to indicate, so I will not stonewall and refuse to answer them, even if they are related to Lincoln Acts, because that's obviously a major budget issue. So first of all, I was stunned to see that none of the board members had any questions on the budgetary implications of the presentations that Chris Palladino and Steve Labuti gave at last Tuesday's meeting. Okay? So what I'm about to ask you are some of the questions that any fiscally responsible board member should have asked before voting to approve the closing of Lincoln Annex and the facilities plan vote that you all did last week and Mr. Spencer introduced in closed session. So first of all, you say that the the proposal is going to cover the entire cost of the new school. So does that mean you're writing a blank check?
Are you going to circle this back around for?
No, I would like an answer. Is DEFCO and RWJ and Blackbird proposing to write a blank check? Because I would like to know who's going to be responsible for cost overruns and are those in this budget? Okay. If they're going to pay for busing, how long will that be and how long are they committing to pay for busing, or will that be in this budget? Okay. What about the cost of moving all of Lincoln Annex's equipment, supplies, and furniture? Who is going to pay for those moving costs? Is that in this budget? Can you answer any of those, please?
I can tell you that none of those costs are in this budget because in order for it to be in the budget would mean that we would be responsible for paying for them, which we wouldn't be if they accept the proposal. So that's the reason why they're not in the budget.
I really don't understand how a board school board can be making a decision, considering a proposal without understanding the budgetary implications for not only the school district, but for the taxpayers. Okay? Secondly, several people have already asked a very important question about who will be fiscally liable. Should the sites, whichever sites chosen, not be remediated correctly and children become ill because of the contamination there? Are the taxpayers of New Brunswick going to have to pay the bill for the lawsuits that might come as a result of this? Or will you all individually be financially liable for this?
I don't consider that a question about the budget. Do you have another comment
It is
you'd like to
a
make?
budget question. It is a budget question. Yes, you said earlier that next year's budget has $57 million below adequacy. So what I would like to know is, if that's the case, then why is the school board currently paying $1 million a year for the lease on 40 Van Dyke to house 40 students, $25,000 per student? Why?
The answer to that question is, and you know, you're talking to someone who's been in the business ministry, you're here for 21 years.
That's fine.
I've supervised over $400 million worth of projects in this district. The answer is that the state of New Jersey, in our long-range facility plan, built that building, paid for it, they ran out of money, and they gave us a choice. They're not paying for it, so do we want to keep that fine educational space? And we need to keep that space because, guess what? One day, maybe, if this proposal wasn't put in front of the Board of Education, the SDA, which we have been working with the Ed Law Center to sue the SDA to raise the appropriate money. That school will be used to move one day, hopefully in my lifetime before I leave here, we will be able to build a Livingston School, a Roosevelt School, and a Lincoln School. And if we did not keep that space, that would never materialize and never happen. So that is the reason why we need to keep the space.
So then we can presume that in next year's budget, there will not be any increased rent on that lease at 40 Van Dyke. It will continue to be $1 million for 800 students now instead of just the 40 students that are currently occupying it?
The rent is staying the same, yes.
Okay. Finally, the current Lincoln Annex School has solar panels, which I presume reduce the electricity costs of the building. Is there in this budget room for any additional electricity costs that might be incurred with an additional 760 students at 40 Van Dyke and the increased usage there?
No, because the same cost that we spend at Lincoln Annex will be transferred over to that school. Matter of fact, we'll probably have a little bit of savings because right now we're operating 2 buildings, right? Whereas if the proposal is accepted in its totality, guess what? It'll be less.
Okay, and do we know how long this budget is going to, how long the Lincoln Annex, the 40 Van Dyke will be used?
Do you have a question about the budget?
Yes, I'm asking about how long we will have to continue paying $1 million on the lease for 40 Van Dyke.
I hope it's for the next 10 years so that the SDA can get in shape and we can, build 5 new schools.
I don't understand how you're saying if they purchased it, that we're paying them, then you're saying we are
No,
paying the
we
SDA $1 million.
pay the land.
You just told me a moment ago that the SDA built that site.
You've
So how
he
is it
lied.
a landlord? Why is it a landlord?
Thank you for your time. You've reached your time limit. Mr. General, if you could please call the next person.
I would like my last question answered, please.
You're supposed to stop the clock while you're talking.
Yes, exactly. I would like my last question answered, please.
You're out of time, Mr. General.
You didn't stop the clock. Come on.
How can you say that the SDA built that building, but a private landlord owns it, and taxpayers are paying $1 million a year for that building? That just defies logic.
I will finish the question and then we'll move on.
I'm sorry?
I will answer the question and then we'll move on? Okay. The SDA paid for that during the building program that we had that enabled us to build Red Shaw School, a kindergarten center, Paul Robeson School. Okay? Once the SDA ran out of money, they no longer will pay for the space.
But you said they built it.
They built it with their money. Yes.
Right, so they own it.
That's not true.
No, they don't own it. They don't own it. Okay? the landlord built it all with the SDA, paying for all the fit outs and everything, and then paying the rent on a yearly basis. So the misconstrued misunderstanding is that they quote unquote built it. They built, when I say built it, meant they paid for it all.
So this was a public-private partnership, in other words, is what you're saying?
I don't know what that means. There's a lot of definitions to public-private partnership that I don't want, Mr. Cratfield to define a public-private partnership that I say yes to. So I answered your question. The time is up. Mr. Mercado, Jerry Mercado.
Come on up, Jerry.
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez. Have a nice day.
Issue. It's a public-private collaboration.
It's a sellout.
You want RWJ and DEFCO to pay for it and Rutgers, and then wash your hands.
Good evening. Question on the budget. So you mentioned 57 million is a shortfall for this school budget?
No, 57 million is the amount of money that the state of New Jersey says that we are below our adequate budget, right? They call it adequacy spending. So the state of New Jersey looks at every school district's population, assigns a dollar amount in funding, that a per pupil amount that should be spent for each children, and then they give you an adequacy spending budget. Our budget this year, going to the next, is $57 million below that. Most of that is based on $46 million in state aid. So if the state had an unlimited amount of money and sent us our state aid based on that funding formula, we would get an additional $46 million in state aid.
So is the 46 shortfall that you're mentioning, does that equate to the tax increase? Or are we, the part of the is, if there's a shortfall, how are we making up for that?
Well, we've been under adequacy for 15 years. There is no way to make up for that. Unless the state of New Jersey, the plan is under Governor Murphy to make up for that in the next 5 years, where he's taking away money from school districts that have been overfunded, and now he's moving that money to the school districts like ours that have been underfunded, along with putting in more money from the state of New Jersey.
And that's the 10 million you talked about earlier.
Right, so what they did is they did all the calculations. They see that we're short $46 million in state aid, and therefore this year they gave us $10.7 million towards that $46 million.
So the shortfall is their calculation, not your budget's calculation.
Correct.
We're able to pay for everything without being in the red, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Now, do you think it would help if there were no pilots in New Brunswick, where we would get more money and then maybe we would be at that higher level? And what I mean by pilots is payment in lieu of taxes.
No, I don't think that has anything to do with the taxes that we raise, okay? So we're raising taxes that's going to cost the average taxpayer $5 a month, right? What you're speaking about doesn't have any effect on the amount of money that we would get for our school district.
Okay. And then you mentioned you have approximately $3 million every year set aside for maintenance. What sort of maintenance equates to $3 million a year? Seems like a very... Are you saying that you set it aside and then if you use it, great. If you don't, then it gets put back?
No, that's about what we spend every year to maintain 15 buildings, between maintaining all the boilers. I'll give you an example. We have hot water heaters here in the high school. We need to replace them. That alone was $250,000. It costs that much money to maintain these school buildings to the standards that we expect them to be maintained.
Okay, and my last question. You mentioned $200,000 has been set aside in the budget for ACs for schools. Do you know what schools you're targeting?
This year we're looking to do the Lincoln School gymnasium and community room space for the Lincoln School.
So no classroom, you're putting AC in the...
That space alone, and I don't know if there's really no classroom spaces. Right, so that space alone will cost $250,000 due to the electrical upgrades that are necessary.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we have Andres Moran.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to talk. So I'll just ask this question right now. Has there been an assessment of the Lincoln Annex site's fair market value for highest and best use in comparison to the amount that Robert Wood Johnson is offering?
Do you have a question for me on the budget, sir?
Sounds budgetary to me.
It doesn't pertain to the 2020-21 preliminary budget that I proposed.
Okay.
It does if you're going to give away the school.
Understood. I know this is all very awkward and a slog for you guys, but this is what happens when a community is threatened and a decision is made that affects it, and they're not allowed to really take part in the decision-making process. And I didn't get to say my fair share back in the 25th, but, well, anyways, I can't speak off the cuff very well, but I just wanted to say that the decision to sell Lincoln Annex was being done in a very misleading way. It's antithetical to democracy. It's a textbook case of gentrification, and this needs to stop. You can't just...
Sir,
yeah, well,
why don't I add your list to the March 24th board meeting now?
sure.
Okay.
But also, I will say my piece now too, I mean...
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for me of the budget, please? I don't want this to be contentious, but we have the form that we have to continue.
Understood. Well, I guess I'm not quite as combative, but yeah, sure. Just please reconsider. I mean, this stuff is just terrible.
Thank you very much. That was all the members of the public that wish to address the board.
Thank you so much, Mr. General. We have item number 5, if we could have a resolution to approve the submission of the proposed budget.
Second.
Mr. General?
Mr. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Seawood?
Yes.
Mr. Villa? Mr. Spencer? Ms. Varela? Mrs. Dr. Caldwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Solis?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. If we could have a motion for closed session, for adjournment, I'm sorry.
Second.
Mr. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Seawood?
Yes.
Ms. Sevilla? Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Dr. Caldwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Solis?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.